So should you or should you not gym sell? In this video, I'm going to give you some reasons why you may want to go to the gym and some reasons why you may not want to go to the gym and give a solution that I think is going to be a lot more applicable for most guys watching this. So firstly, why should you go to the gym? Well, despite what a lot of people might say, right? A lot of these autists might say, natural gym selling, it's always going to be one of the best looks maxes that you can do, especially when you're past 18 and you can't grow in height or frame anymore, or when your maxilla has stopped developing. And the reason for this is when you train in the gym, you're basically frauding your genetics and bone structure, right? For example, I have the female example over here. When you see this physique, right, when we look at a female physique, the hourglass shape, if I can draw it, it's like the equivalent of the male V taper. And the reason for this is for the hip bones, right? The actual bones, right? It's about bones. No gym for your bones, am I right? But it's about the bones of the hip, because when a female has wide hip bones, that means she's better at giving birth. And you can see in this photo, this woman, she doesn't have very wide hip bones at all in this photo, right? In her actual bones. But by training the glutes, the actual muscle of the glutes, right, she's building the illusion of wider hips. So her bone structure hasn't actually changed, but just by building that muscle and creating the illusion of wider hips, when our brain sees this, right, when our male brain sees this, our brain mistakenly believes that she actually has wide hip bones. And because of that, we find the butt very, very attractive. Right? And because having wide hip bones is a high estrogen trait. So even though her bone structure didn't change, right, she still has the same hip bones because she built up the actual muscle of the glutes and around that area. It creates the visual illusion, which basically tricks your brain into thinking that she has, the actual high estrogen bone structure. And I use this example because when guys actually see the female example and they realize how powerful it is, because they get a bit turned on when they see a big butt. And we can extrapolate that to the male example, right? The male example, like I talked about, of wide hip bones would be wide frame, wide clavicle, right, up here on the top. And same thing, right? You can see this guy, he doesn't have, in the before photo at least, he doesn't have, the best frame, um, best bone structure. But by building up the muscles around, the delts and the lats and all that, he's creating that width and that V shape, which again creates the illusion of wider clavicles. So the bones are actually just the same, but the whole point of the gym in the first place is to build your muscle in a specific way that frauds your bone structure, right? That creates the illusion of wider clavicles and wider frame, or wider hip bones in a woman. And I'll give you another example as well. So this photo of Leon Edwards and this TikTok I found are examples of shape over size. So Leon Edwards, if you actually look at his bone structure, right, in proportion to his head and all that, he doesn't have very wide clavicles in general, right? He doesn't have very wide frame, but because he actually built up the shoulders, you can see how capped his shoulders are, and he has the lats, right, all the way running down, and he's pretty lean, so he has a small waist in general. Even though his absolute measurements aren't the widest, because he has that shape, that V shape, he's still, the most aesthetic physique in the UFC. And the female example of this would just be this TikTok I found of shape over size. So in terms of absolute measurement, right, the absolute, if you were to take a tape measure and measure the absolute measurement around the hips, the absolute measurement is not that great, just like in the Leon Edwards examples of his clavicles. But because of the shape, right, if you have the shape, even if you don't have the absolute measurement, right, most guys would still find this pretty attractive. So this is why gym selling will always be one of the best looks maxes, because even if you don't have the best frame, if you don't have very wide clavicles, as long as you can build up the shape, which most guys can by lower lats, shoulders, just proper gym selling and not training like a like not training like a gym cell, right? Proper aesthetics focused gym selling, most guys can achieve that. And even if you don't have the biggest absolute measurement, right? If you have the shape, you don't need absolute measurement of absolute size. As long as you have the shape, that's still gonna work really well. So that's why gym selling will always be one of the best looks maxes you can do, because the V shape and the hourglass shape, they are like primal attraction, right? If you have a woman who's pretty ugly in the face, but she has the shape, then you still be down to fuck. Let's keep it real. And yeah, that's enough of that. That's why it'll always be one of the greatest looks maxes, and that's why you should gym sell. Now, what about the other side of the argument, right? Why you shouldn't gym sell, right? Because some of you may be watching certain YouTubers who tell you to not go to the gym, and these are going to be some of the reasons that he would cite. First one is when you have an unnatural amount of muscle caused by lifting man-made metal, it would stress the heart and decrease lifespan. So this is a very extreme example of a guy with 350 pounds of muscle, and you can just tell by looking at this guy that he's not healthy because he has way too much muscle for his heart to support. And to an extent, that's the same reason why carrying a large amount of muscle, even when you're natural, could be unhealthy as well, right? Because let's say you're natural and over a lifetime, you have 30 pounds of extra muscle. So let's say you're supposed to be 165 pounds. That's your natural weight that your body was meant to be, but now you're 205 pounds, right? You have all this weight, and firstly, your joints may not actually be able to support that very well, right? You may get joint problems and joint pain because you're 40 pounds heavier than you're supposed to be. But just your heart in general, right? Your heart has to pump blood to that extra 40 pounds of muscle, and it has to work way harder, right? Your heart is only supposed to support a 165-pound person, but when you're 40 pounds overweight, and your heart has to work way harder, and it's basically going to decrease your lifespan, just like having way too much muscle or way too much fat in these examples. And the second reason is that working out itself would stress the body and lower testosterone, because you're placing a huge amount of stress on your body, and you don't want to stress your body a lot. And I'm going to give you a solution to all of this that you can do, right? And I'm going to give you a middle ground, which I think is going to be a lot more reasonable for pretty much any guy, really. So to understand this, working out, building muscle in the gym, it is a trade-off between some of your health and the social benefits of having a good physique. However, there are things we can do to basically minimize the harm to negligible amounts while still remaining most of the benefits. And the first way is to focus only on the muscles that matter, because like we talked about, right? The goal is not to pack on as much muscle as possible. The goal should not be to add 40 pounds of muscle across the whole body, even if it means getting like huge butt and huge legs, right? We only want muscles in the areas that matter. So you can have extra 15 pounds of muscle on your legs. That's not really going to make you look better. Whereas having an extra 5 pounds on your shoulders, that's going to improve your frame and your physique massively. And basically, what you want to focus on as a man, as a male, is your upper body, because like we talked about earlier, right? When you're a male, you're building that V shape in your upper body, and the female, you're building your lower body shape to create the illusion of wider hips. Which is why when you look at these physiques, you look at these top heavy physiques, the Andrew Tate physique, where you have super skinny legs and a huge upper body, it's going to be way more attractive than having a skinny upper body and huge legs. And the reverse is true for a woman, right? Having this huge upper body and skinny legs physique, it's going to be way less attractive than having this mid upper body but huge lower body type physique. So basically what I'm saying is feel free to skip legs, right? You can have skinny legs if you want to. The most important muscles are going to be all in the upper body, right? Your shoulders, your neck, your traps, your biceps, your upper chest, your abs. I think I said lats already, right? All the important muscles for aesthetics, it's going to be in the upper body if you're a male. And yeah, just don't obsess with having like maximum muscle across your body. Just focus on the ones that you actually need. And if your legs do look really skinny, then sure, you can train your legs until you're happy with the size. But once you're happy with the size, then you don't really need to train it much more and put extra muscle on your body. And the second thing you can do is do a low volume training split, which it's very low volume, and you're using reps in reserve to never go to failure. Because the second concern after just having a huge amount of muscle is just working out itself would stress the body and lower testosterone. And that can be true, especially if you're doing like 15 rep, 20 rep squats where you're stressing out your body and you're basically being sore for the next week or so. But if you do an actual science-based low volume routine, you can probably make more gains than all the high volume guys while still having minimum fatigue and minimum stress on your body. So this is what a like high volume session might look like, right? 5 sets of bench press, 5 sets of rows, all these like 10, 20 sets a week on all these different muscle groups and workouts that take 1 to 2 hours, right? So you can do something like this, which is a low volume, science-based upper body routine where you have 1 set of preacher curl, 1 set shoulder press, pec deck, Keenan flap, or a wide grip pull down, T-bar row, and decline sit-up. And that's basically going to train your whole upper body, right? Maybe throw in a tricep extension if you want the long head of the triceps to be trained more. And the whole thing will take less than 45 minutes, depending on how strong you are. And because we're using low reps to minimize calcium ion accumulation and just muscle damage, and we're also doing reps in reserve. So let's say we do 1 RIR. So we never actually go to failure. The whole thing is super fast, and you should never feel exhausted after a workout, right? Nowadays, when I do these science-based workouts, I pretty much don't feel exhausted as well because you're stimulating growth, right? It's going to stimulate growth, especially if you do it 3 times a week, whilst minimizing all the fatigue and stress, muscle damage, calcium ion accumulation, all of that. And just, yeah, making it not stressful on your body as well. And if you do these 2 things, right, you focus only on the muscles that matter, that's going to help prevent you from having unnecessary muscle on your body that your heart has to work extra hard for. And if you do this type of low volume RIR training, then you're not going to stress yourself out with like super high volume workouts. Then you're basically negating most of the harm of going to the gym. And if you focus on your upper body and actually do this properly, you're going to get the most important muscles as a man, as a male, and it's going to improve your physique the most and be one of the greatest looks maxes you can do and greatest investments that you can do as well. So yeah, that's it for the video. If it was helpful, you can check out BP Fitness, link in the description. I got more exclusive videos and stuff, diet, science-based training, and of course the private Discord community as well. So yeah, go check that out if you're interested, and I'll see you in the next video.